Bhaktivedanta Namin Namre Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramhamsa Parivrajakaacharya अष्टोत्तर शत शीर्ष पद इस डिवाइन ग्रेस इसी भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत शीर्ष पद डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्त सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री दास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहिए श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय। मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। श्री क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा माई यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेत गौर भक्त बिंद की जय। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द असेंबल्ड डिवोटीज हरे कृष्णा। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द असेंबल्ड डिवोटीज हरे कृष्णा। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द असेंबल्ड डिवोटीज हरे कृष्णा। ऑल ग्लोरीज ऑल ग्लोरीज to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai, Jai. Thank you so much, Sucharya Deva Prabhu. And thank you, Tulsi Priya, for the Mayapur Mangal Arti screen share. And welcome to everyone for Sri Caitanya-caritamrta class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami and friends. I'm still waiting for Maharaj to show up. Haven't received any notice from him yet today that he wouldn't be showing up. So we're happily expecting that he will. So today is Thursday, February 8th, 2024 in New York, and we're in Caitanya-caritamrta, Adi Leela, chapter 7, starting tonight with text number 120. And someone, of course, can correct me if that's wrong, but according to my notes from last week, we left off speaking about Charvaka Muni and buying, begging, or stealing ghee. Haven't yet gotten to text 120. Om Namo. Well, yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'll start us off, and hopefully Maharaj will be able to attend here. So text 120, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking to Prakashananda Saraswati and the Mayavadi sannyasis of Benares. And let's see what he says here. Hena jiva tattva lanya liki para tattva achchanna korila shesta ishvara mahattva. The Mayavada philosophy, it is Adi Lila, chapter 7, text number 120. The Mayavada philosophy is so degraded that it has taken the insignificant living entities to be the Lord, the supreme truth, thus covering the glory and supremacy of the absolute truth with monism. Purport. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments in this connection that in all the Vedic scriptures, the Jiva Tattva, the truth of the living entities, is mentioned to be one of the energies of the Lord. If one does not accept the living entity to be a minute, infinitesimal spark of the Supreme, but equates the Jiva Tattva with the Supreme Brahman, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, it must be understood that his entire philosophy is based on a misunderstanding. Unfortunately, Sripad Shankaracharya purposely claimed the Jiva Tattva, or living entities, to be equal to the Supreme God. Therefore, his entire philosophy is based on a misunderstanding, and it misguides people to become atheists whose mission in life is unfulfilled. The mission of human life, as described in the Bhagavad Gita, is to surrender unto the Supreme Lord and become his devotee. But the Mayavada philosophy misleads one to defy the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and pose oneself as the Supreme Lord. Thus, it has misguided hundreds of thousands of innocent men. In the Vedanta Sutra, Vyasadeva has described that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is potent, and that everything, material or spiritual, is but an emanation of his energy. The Lord, the Supreme Brahman, is the origin or source of everything, Janmadyasya yataha. And all other manifestations are emanations of different energies of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Vishnu Purana. Eka desha statas yagner jyotsnya vishtarini yata parasya brahmana shaktis tatedam akhilang jagat. Whatever we see in this world is simply an expansion of different energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is exactly like a fire that spreads illumination for a long distance, although it is situated in one place. This is a very vivid example. Similarly, it is stated that just as everything in the material world exists in the sunshine, which is the energy of the sun, so everything exists on the basis of the spiritual and material energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, although Krishna is situated in his own abode, Goloka eva nivasatyakilatma bhutaha, where he enjoys his transcendental pastimes with the cowherd boys and gopis, he is nevertheless present everywhere, even within the atoms of this universe. Andantarasta paraman chayantarastam. This is the verdict of the Vedic literature. Unfortunately, the Mayavada philosophy, misguiding people by claiming the living entity to be the Lord, has created havoc throughout the entire world and led almost everyone to godlessness. By thus covering the glories of the Supreme Lord, the Mayavadi philosophers have done the greatest disservice to human society. It is to counteract these most abominable activities of the Mayavadi philosophers that Lord Chaitanya has introduced the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Iva Kevalam. Kalo nastyeva, nastyeva, nastyeva gatir anyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. People should simply engage in the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. For thus they will gradually come to understand that they are not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as they have been taught by the Mayavadi philosophers, but are eternal servants of the Lord. As soon as one engages himself in the transcendental service of the Lord, he becomes free. Mang chayo vyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Therefore, the Hare Krishna movement, or Krishna consciousness movement, is the only light for the foolish living entities who think either that there is no God or that if God exists, he is formless and they themselves are also God. These misconceptions are very dangerous, and the only way to counteract them is to spread the Hare Krishna movement. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalatam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopistang Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadama Hyam Dadati Svapadantikam. Bandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitang Stang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitang Cha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Hena degraded Jiva Tattva, the living entities, Lanya, taking them, Likhi, having written, Paratattva as the supreme, Achchana, covering, Karila did, Shrestha, the supreme personality of Godhead, Ishvara, the Lord's Mahatva glories. Mayavada philosophy is so degraded that it has taken insignificant living entities to be the Lord, the supreme truth, thus covering the glory and supremacy of the absolute truth with monism. Yeah, and in the purport Prabhupada brings out that Bhaktivinoda Thakur points out that everywhere in our philosophy, everywhere in the Vedic literature, it's very clearly delineated that there's a big difference between the supreme Brahman and all the infinitesimal living entities. Great difference in significance of them. The quality is the same. Everyone is spiritual. That's not a problem. But when you equate the jiva with the Supreme Lord, then you run into all kinds of problems. Like, for example, there's no meaning to supreme. If everyone is supreme, no one is supreme. So that cancels that one out. And it's as if the hardcore Mayavada philosophers, they see the living entity, that there's something there. They say Om Namo Narayanaya to each other if they're sannyasis, and they have some idea that everyone is the Supreme Lord. So they're seeing something there, but they're not seeing the, as we say, they're, what is it? They can't see the forest for the trees. They see an individual and they think that's the Supreme Lord. But when everybody's supreme, no one is supreme. Your vision becomes narrowed if you accept this philosophy. Krishna says, Maya ya parityajnana. You're unable to see the big picture. You only see a small slice of it. Your knowledge becomes shrunken, or your access to the greater view of reality becomes restricted. That's what happens. And this whole Mayavad process of saying that the individual is God and that everything is ultimately Maya, not only is it unreasonable, but it seems to go very nicely with modern day theories that go on in the name of science. That every individual, all of us, we feel significance for ourselves because we're experiencing living entities. But without Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, our significance can't be, our existence, what to speak of our significance, we can't explain the origin of our existence in any reasonable way. So then the playing field just becomes level. Everybody's God. But has no meaning, because the word God has no meaning, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu points that out, that it's degraded, that it covers the glory and supremacy of the actual absolute truth with this other stuff that Shankaracharya in his form as Lord Shiva in his form as Shankaracharya had the thankless task of spreading all over. I was looking at a transcript of a lecture that Prabhupada gave. He spoke briefly on this very verse tonight, this verse number 120, and he really takes to task various proponents of it, modern day proponents of it. He name checks them in this instance, which he doesn't always do. But he said, you should be very, very careful. Hena jiva tattvalanya liki para tattva. And just study the ordinary living entities, and I'm speaking the absolute truth. Oh, this is the greatest nonsensical activity. So he's re-quoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a slightly different way there. Achchana karila shrestha ishvara mahatva. By this, the glorification of the Lord has been diminished, and therefore it is a great offense. Tulsi Priya, you have a hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes, I do. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. First of all, could you jot down in the chat box the source for what you were just reading, if you're able? And second of all, I would like to understand how to the Mayavadi saying that the living entity is Krishna, in what sense, and in what sense, because this reminds me of in the purport to Bhagavad Gita, as it is, I think chapter 9, text 17. In the purport, let me see if I have the verse up. Yeah. So this is the verse of Pitaham Asya Jagato Mata Dahata Pitamaha Vedyam Pavitram Omkara Riksama Yajur Evacha. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om, etc. And then in the purport, Prabhupada mentions different entities who are nothing but Krishna. He says the father, the mother. He says the living entities who appear to be our father, mother, etc., are nothing but Krishna. And then he also says any living entity being part and parcel of Krishna is Krishna. So we know what Prabhupada means, but it's kind of bewildering and exciting when Prabhupada's saying this is Krishna, that is Krishna, everybody's Krishna. And so I'm wondering, we understand what Prabhupada means when he says that. And it makes sense because everything is Krishna's energy. Everything is part of Krishna. On different levels, certain living entities represent Krishna. The guru in particular represents Krishna as the supreme person, as the supreme authority. And so my question is, how do the Mayavadis make sense of saying that the living entity is Krishna? Like I can say I'm being a jiva, I'm also Krishna, but I understand that I'm subordinate, I'm inferior, I don't have, the tiniest fraction of the power of Krishna. But that's not the same thing. I don't get what they're saying when they say that especially if the Supreme Lord is Maya, a product of Maya, then what's the point of saying that the living we already know we're Maya as jivas, we're mired in Maya. So what's the point of even saying that the jiva is also, equal to the Supreme Lord, unless if everything is Maya, yeah, then everything is, the jiva is the Supreme Lord, but the Supreme Lord is Maya, so we're also Maya. I don't know how they make sense out of it. And if somebody can explain, I want to know from their perspective how they make sense out of it. Good luck, right? Okay.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard things in the past, you read about, like prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, you read various, but it all appears to be sentimental, like this kind of conception. You're doing meditation. I am one with the universe. So Maharaj has said in a mocking way, and I the planets, and I am controlling the sun. It's a kind of a sentimental, fanciful meditation to, get out of your own tiny conception of whatever, but I don't see how on an intelligent, rational, philosophical level they can say it. What's their reasoning?
Well, that's good that you can't see it, because that means you're a good devotee.
Well, I haven't heard it. That's all. I want to hear what they say. I just want to know how they make sense of it.
Yeah, well, Maharaj does say that when he was working on this chapter, which incidentally, this chapter 7 of the Adi Lila, is the first chapter of the Caitanya-caritamrta that Srila Prabhupada undertook to translate when he decided in 1972 that he was going to do the whole CC. This is the chapter that he started with. He didn't start with chapter 1. He started with this very chapter. And Maharaj says that when he was working on editing this chapter, especially trying to untangle the logic behind the statements of Sadhananda Yogendra mentioned in some of the above verses, he went to Prabhupada and said, "This doesn't make any sense." And Prabhupada said, "Yes, that's right, it doesn't." Mm. And in the lecture that Prabhupada gave on this verse, and I posted the source of it, apparently it was 1967, February, in San Francisco. He says, "Oh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regrets that such a great difference between God and the living entity, and Shankaracharya has described that we are God. That means he has diminished the opulence and value of God. Suppose if I call a third-class man His Majesty." And what is that? This word, His Majesty, is misused. And then he goes into a long thing about Daridra Narayan, which he had no patience for. But as far as how they understand it, you can count yourself blessed that you don't know.
It seems very sentimental, It's like we were talking about this the other day. It always seems that people who are disempowered, they'll have these kinds of songs that they're bragging on themselves, like back in the 70s, there was this song called "I Am Woman," and it was like an anthem of the feminist woman. "I am woman, hear me roar." And why does somebody do something like that? Because they feel disempowered, so they're trying to pump themselves up.
Sure, sure.
Any marginalized group will come up with cheers and rants and whatever. It's like, this power, that power, we're the best. And yet at the same time, they're saying we are disempowered, so it doesn't make any sense.
Yes, but it does make sense on a certain level, because here we are in Kali Yuga, people's consciousness and their life force, and everything is shrinking, shrinking, shrinking. So the disempowered class that you speak of is just us, the human beings, because at the same time, any conscious living entity feels that they have some significance for themselves, but without understanding in relation to what, why is there significance? Why, what about me is important and deserving of attention? What is of consequence? Without knowing that we have a source that is the greatest person, then, along comes Shankaracharya and says, you're all God. And boy, doesn't that sound good, to somebody who feels disempowered? Yeah, I like that philosophy.
Marai Gupta Prabhu has his hand up. I'm sorry, I thought you were
Yes.
done.
No, Marai Gupta Prabhu, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Tulsi Mataji. I was on the internet one time, and I don't know how I got there, but I was reading these passages, and it was sort of spiritual, and I thought, this is very interesting. This is very nicely written. I wonder what this is. And it turned out to be passages from Shankaracharya's Sariraka. And I was actually very, not exactly attracted, but appreciative of how it had been, how the different things, it wasn't directly in your face Mayavad, but it was very intriguing and interesting. But then when I saw what it was, I thought, oh no, this is not good. And I stopped reading it and never went back there. And if you don't understand it, and if you don't think it's intelligent, it's a blessing. You really don't want to think this is very intelligent. This is well thought out. I get this, because if you go down that rabbit hole, Mahaprabhu's warned us, you're doomed, actually. And this is what apparently happens, that this very clever presentation by Lord Shiva, no less, will trap a person and lead them into the hell of Mayavad. And it's not something we should really desire to learn and study and become familiar with it. In fact, it's forbidden. So I think you should be happy that you don't understand it, and don't try to get into the details of it, because just that small exposure, this is very interesting. This person obviously understands what they're talking about, but it was pure Shankaracharya's commentary. Not good, not good. Don't go there. Hare Krishna.
I have a little comment to make, but I want, if others want to make their points first, you can read their comments. I just I have something to say to Marai Gupta Prabhu about that.
Go ahead, please go ahead. I'm looking for an article right now to post a link to.
So I would say prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, I had a lot of exposure to that sort of thing, and I swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. And it was a bit of a struggle, but I think I had a saving grace because I was raised in the Catholic faith for many years, and I went to Catholic schools and studied religion, and so I think in one sense, personalism was already in me, but I became very attracted to because that's all I knew at first. And actually, I met devotees when I was a small child, so maybe that was also a saving grace, hearing the Hare Krishna mantra. But I'm talking purely from an academic point of view. I was like, justify your position. That's all I want. I have already heard it much, and I bought into it and whatever. But I don't really remember if I ever heard any sort of intellectual or very reasoned defense of that position. I've only heard what, let's say popularizers of that idea have said about it, and I doubt even those who popularize, somebody like Ram Dass or Alan Watts or whoever, I don't think maybe maybe Alan Watts, I don't know. Ram Dass, he was always kind of a sentimentalist, but I would like to hear the academic defense of such a thing, because I don't know that I've ever heard that. But I don't want to say I'm not in danger of falling for it, because obviously I fell for it once. But I feel like, personalism is a very strong, the idea that the absolute truth is a person makes more sense than anything. It makes more sense than anything. You can only be against personalism. It's just dogmatic. It's just dogmatic. Prabhupada has defended personalism sufficiently, at least for me. But I appreciate your warning.
Yeah. Yeah, we should all appreciate his warning. There's two things that I was looking for before I get to the chat box. One of those things I've posted in the chat there, there's a link to it, an article I posted some years ago, conversation with Prabhupada that we called "We Worship Everything," and it's the Vaishnava view of seeing everything as Krishna. And that's very sweet. You can read that, and it takes off on the purport that Tulsi Priya was mentioning from the Bhagavad Gita, where a devotee sees everyone and everything as Krishna. And Maharaj has often told the story of, in 26 Second Avenue, Prabhupada was there with Hayagriva Prabhu, and Hayagriva Prabhu was moving something across the floor with his leg. And Prabhupada says, you shouldn't touch that with your foot. It was a clock or something that had to get put on the wall, and he was moving it instead of with his hand, moving it with his foot. And Hayagriva looked at Prabhupada uncomprehendingly. He said, "Do you mean to say that clock is more holy than my foot?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes." So someone who's actually a devotee of Krishna, he'll see everything as Krishna except for himself. Whereas someone who's steeped in Mayavad philosophy is trained to think of himself as God and everything else as Maya. So it's the total opposite. It's just a question of the mood, whether the center is me or the center is Krishna. I thought, Maharaj is here. I saw him perhaps in a moving vehicle of some kind. Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna. Looks like he's trying to get his audio situated there. Definitely appears to be in a moving vehicle. Hare Krishna. Anyway, until he does, I'll read a couple things from the chat box, and then I'm trying to find another a corollary thing to post there. There's a long seminar series that Ravindra Swarup Prabhu gave called "Defeating Mayavada Philosophy," which is all available on ISKCON Desire Tree. And in there, you might find, because he does quote several passages from the original Sharyaka Bhashya, just for everyone's edification, that you can find what you're looking for there, Tulsi Priya and others. Devi's Child says, Hare Krishna, how did a part of Krishna, us, become slaves to Maya? We may not be quantitatively equal to Krishna, but qualitatively we are similar to Krishna because we are part of Krishna. Yes, somehow or other, we've come to this material atmosphere. And once we're in the material atmosphere, we may be marginal potency and sort of in the hierarchy of Krishna's energies above what we know to be Krishna's inferior energy. But we're in the kingdom of the inferior energy. So as long as you're in that kingdom of inferior energy, you are subject to the laws of that inferior energy. And that's just the way it is. But he continues then, but then why would we discriminate against dogs? Well, Shuni Chayava Shvapake Cha Pandita Samadarshana. A pandit wouldn't discriminate. Why should we be giving it more respect? We should be giving it more respect than us, right? Yeah, but in a proper way. We don't embrace the tiger. we want to cultivate the mode of goodness, we don't sleep with dogs because we consider everything else as Krishna except us. Yes, but everything has to be seen in its proper perspective. Saraswati Mata says, we are warned about associating with Mayavadis or even hearing from them and their nonsense. But for preachers, they have to hear from them in order to defeat their philosophy. We would hope beginner Vaishnavas don't get converted by Mayavadis, but some of us may not be in the position to defeat them, even if we know it's nonsense they are spewing. Yeah, let me look for that link for that lecture series, because he does make some humorous points in the beginning. He had studied philosophy of religion in college, and he actually was a student of Swami Nikhilananda, whom Prabhupada name checks in his lecture on today's verse that he gave in San Francisco, Swami Nikhilananda. So he's heard plenty of Mayavada philosophy, and he tells his students, that devotees in Radha Desh, that he's going to give them just enough of the original text of Shankaracharya so that they know what we're trying to defeat, but not so much that they actually become Mayavadis. So, like we've said in previous classes, the most important Mayavadi we have to defeat is the one inside our own heart, because this philosophy has been so unfortunately pervasive and persuasive throughout the centuries, coming down to us. Hare Krishna. I think we already discussed this point. Davy's child is bringing up. It is almost similar. Okay. A lot of chats here. How come a part of Krishna who is qualitatively equal to Krishna, isn't it almost similar to saying Krishna's power can become a slave to Maya? Well, there's Krishna's power, and then there's the power of the individual living entity, which is limited. Limited. We're limited. Krishna is unlimited. So yes, if we take shelter of Krishna, if we surrender to Krishna, like Arjuna did, then our power can become similarly practically unlimited. But without that, in the material world anyway, we're just slaves to the modes, slaves to our senses, and as you say, slaves to Maya. If a dog is also Krishna, what is wrong with hugging it and sleeping with it? Well, we don't say the dog is Krishna himself. Dog is certainly a living entity in dog form, part of Krishna's energy, but there's a difference there between the soul and the body. Hare Krishna. How come a part of Krishna can be limited? That's part of Krishna's greatness, that he has both unlimited and limited potencies and unlimited potencies. All paradoxes can be resolved within Krishna. Yes, Krishna is infinite, and a part of infinite is infinite. Right. 1/1,000,000th part of infinity is still infinity. Good point. But still, we're infinitesimal, and Krishna is infinite. We're not God. And that's the point that Prabhupada is really trying to drive home here, that there is a difference between the jiva and God. He says here in this lecture, another excerpt I'll read here. Therefore ignorance. Here it is stated, avidya karma sangyanya. This is from a verse that we read last week or the week before. This ignorance cannot cover God. That is nonsense. Ignorance covers God's energy, the living entity. Therefore, we say that we are God, but now we have become dog. That is another ignorance. He's never God. He's the energy of God. This is the difference between Mayavada philosophy and Vaishnava philosophy. We should always know that we are energies of God, and because we are energies, there are so many things qualitatively equal. Just the same example The warmth and the illumination of the sunshine and the sun planet is practically the same, but the sun is never covered by a cloud, but the sunshine is covered. Sometimes, not always. Tulsi Priya, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, I was just thinking in relation to Devi's child questions, there's that old philosophical, I forget what the word is, not paradox. Well, yeah, it's a paradox. Says, can God create a stone so heavy that he can't move it? And the answer is yes, and then he will move it because Krishna is ever expanding, he's ever increasing. But I seem to recall reading, I don't know if it was C.S. Lewis, who's a famous Christian writer, that there is one stone that God will not move, and that is the will of the creature, of the living entity. So even though Krishna is all powerful, he doesn't interfere with our free will. So if we choose to be obstinate and we don't want to serve him, he's not going to interfere with that. He's not going to, he respects that. So that's in one sense, that's the kind of stone that Krishna doesn't move, because we don't want it to be moved. We don't allow it to be moved. So everything goes back to surrender or the lack thereof. I was also thinking, when you have a magnet, if you have a very powerful magnet, it can attract all kinds of little tiny iron filings and pull it towards it. But if you have a gigantic piece, of metal, it's not going to be able to pull it, so easily. So we're all tiny little jivas, and the material energy is like this powerful magnet. And I don't know very much about magnetism, but I know that there are the different polarities. And so sometimes you have two magnets and they'll repel each other instead of attract. So if we're turned towards Krishna, then we're pulled towards Krishna. And if we're turned towards Maya, we're repelled by Krishna and turned and pulled towards Maya. And that's depending on which way we turn ourselves to. It's everything hinges on our willingness to serve Krishna. And if we don't want to, it's not going to happen. But we also serve Maya. We're serving Krishna either way. We're serving Krishna's energy in the form of Maya. But it's not conducive to it's not congenial to relationship with Krishna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I posted the link to the Defeating Mayavada Philosophy seminar series there. Good stuff there. A lot of helpful stuff. Want to make sure I don't miss anything in the chat here. There's quite a bit of activity. And forgive me if I did miss things. There's new things popping up every second, it seems. Saraswati Mata says, even though we, Jiva Tattva, are qualitatively equal to Krishna, still I believe we can only have 73% of his qualities, never 100%. Yeah, that's to be found elsewhere, that say Lord Brahma is said to have 78% of as the topmost jiva in the universe, 78% of Krishna's qualities, of course. And then Lord Shiva has a little bit more than that. Right, Davies Child says both sun and sunshine not covered by clouds. We only think and feel like they got covered. Yes, because from our perspective, they're covered. They cannot be covered with cloud. Like Krishna, they are in a level above the cloud. Right. Yeah, from our perspective, we can be covered by a cloud. It's not that the sun is covered by the cloud. The sun creates the cloud. Saraswati Mata says, once I was challenged that since qualitatively we are the same as Krishna, so we have the quality of being enjoyer and enjoying others. Yeah, and because we're not Krishna, we also have the quality of suffering like anything as a result of thinking that we can try to enjoy. Yeah. So good luck with that. Right. Davies Child says we only have to move away to a place where there's no clouds or go above the cloud by plane or spacecraft. Yeah, Prabhupada gives that example a lot. Yeah. I found another charming excerpt from Prabhupada's speaking on this very verse that we're speaking of tonight. He says, God is never covered by ignorance. This is nonsense. Those fools and rascals say that God, we are God, we are now covered. It is the most rascaldom. How? If we are God, how we can be covered by ignorance? Then what is your value of your becoming God? You are not God. You are, this is very nicely explained here. Try to understand. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that living entities, they are energy of God. They are never God. I'll read on because it's so nectarian. The Shankaracharya's theory is nullified by evidences from Vedic scripture, just like Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Purana. These were the first points that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought up in this section when he's addressing Prakashananda Saraswati. So never claim that we are God. That is the darkest part of your ignorance when you say that I am God. There is neither voidness, neither you are God. You are eternal, perpetual, blissful, but your blissful is now covered by this Maya. You get out of it, be one with Krishna consciousness. Your life is successful. This is this theory. Hare Krishna. Murai Gupta Prabhu says, at the same time, Krishna does interfere with our independence at one level with the Sankirtan movement, which purifies everyone, like it or not. Yes, and it is also said that Krishna's devotees are even more merciful than Krishna himself. And they're the ones who are going to get on our case and ask us to take a book, ask us to chant Hare Krishna, ask us to do so many different kinds of service. They're the ones. Yes. Give us that extra push that we may need. Hare Krishna. Yeah, you can see how appealing the Mayavada philosophy is to an ever increasingly materially absorbed population. Why is it popular? Just because if people have any philosophy at all, the Mayavada kind of checks the boxes for how they want to see the world. Oh, I'm God. Okay, good. Check. I'm the enjoyer. Check. Good. I'm supreme. Good. It's all Maya. I can do what I want. Check. I like that. Saraswati Mata says, one offense in chanting the holy names of Krishna is not to preach the glories of holy names to the faithless. So when we preach about the mantra to everyone, is that an offense? We may not be going into all details of the holy name powers. Right. Well, that's the art of presenting Krishna consciousness, to find those who are interested. Prabhupada did that by introducing, first of all, chanting and prasadam. And then when people started to ask questions, he said, good, now you're becoming advanced. You are asking questions. Or I've told this, I'm sure, before, or you've heard this before, that when Tamal Krishna Goswami used to travel by bus to various college campuses all over North America, and they would put on fabulous kirtans led by Vishnu Jana Swami and full band and distribute very, very attractive prasadam. Tamal Krishna Goswami would just go to the students who were sitting and eating, listening to the music, and he would just ask them two questions. How do you like the food? How do you like the music? And then depending on their response, he would either sit and talk with them, or he'd move on to somebody else. If they said, oh, this is the best music, the best food ever, there's your likely candidate for preaching the glories of the holy name. Otherwise, you've got prasadam, you've heard the holy name, I'm going to go find somebody who's ready to ask some questions, who I can speak to. So that way you don't run the risk of preaching to the faithless. They sort themselves out by the quality of their interest in one or the other components of our presentation. Davy's Child says, like some electronic equipment, some companies restrict their performance by using some settings in their software. Yes, but those equipments are in the same capability as before. It's just the company wanted to restrict them to sell other equipment. We only have to rewrite their software. It's back to full power. We have to remove our ego and connect back to Krishna. Yes, we are back. We only have to remember our relationship with Krishna, whatever it may be, friend, father, guru, etc. Yes. Yes, increasing permissions are granted to those who become purified through devotional service. Thank you very much. Maury Gupta Prabhu says, Mayavada is also very popular with those who are frustrated with material life, so it has a wide appeal in today's world. Yes, we have a lot of work to do. Jai Maharaj, he says, arrived at destination, have to go. Thank you so much for checking in. Thank you for blessing us with even a brief appearance in the chat window. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yeah, so this whole business of the Mayavadis claiming the ultimate significance of Jiva Tattva, it really shows a loss of perspective. It's not a complete picture of reality. You're stuck, as Davies Child says, at a certain level of perception. Just like as a cartoon or a virtual reality, it provides an oversimplified version of reality, or a computer-generated semblance of some kind of reality. The mistake, of course, is to think that that's reality, which is what Maya does to us. We think the physical world and our life inside it is the reality in which we're the potential star, Om Namo Narayanaya. It's very, very appealing to the conditioned, bewildered soul. And Davies Child says, Maya is material energy, and material energy is temporary, which means what is covering our vision is also temporary. Yeah, thankfully, it is temporary. What does Krishna say? However, bhutva praliyate. I was just reading in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he's talking about the cycles of Lord Brahma's life and everyone's life within the material universes. If you don't come to the point of surrender to Krishna, then your temporary material life is a lot less temporary than it is for those who take the direct route of surrendering to Krishna. Yes, Tulsi Priya says, instead of being stars of a reality show, we are stars of an illusory show. Very good. And with that, I think we can pause, because the next verse I'm expecting is another chunky and very thought-provoking piece of philosophical stuff. So, and Saraswati Mata says, I'm grateful and relieved that falling under Maya's influence isn't irreversible. Yes, that's the best news that it's the best news of the day. Hare Krishna. So we need a closing kirtan leader, and we were prepared to ask tonight because Maharaj was traveling in Bangladesh and he's been extolling the virtues of Bangladeshi kirtan leaders, hoping to hear from some Bangladeshi kirtan leader, but that didn't come to pass. So, Hare Krishna. So failing a Bangladeshi kirtan leader, Sucharu Prabhu led our opening kirtan, and Prabhu, if you like, you can appoint the closing kirtan leader, since you have the privilege of doing so. Or I can ask somebody. Saraswati Mataji, would you like to lead a kirtan? We haven't heard from you in a while.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Brahmsa Parivrat Jagatarya Astottara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai His compounder Acharya, Savior of the world, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Srasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda, Sri Radha Krishna, Gopa Govinda Shamaku, Radhaku, Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Brinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Jai Sri Guru Angaranga. Guru Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai, thanks so much, Krishna Konteya Prabhu, and thank you everyone for being here. And glad Maharaj could make at least a cameo appearance tonight from a moving vehicle. Always inspiring to see him. Shri Caitanya-caritamrta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami and friends ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hope to see you all tomorrow, Friday, for Srimad-Bhagavatam, and if not sooner. Thank you again for being here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Hare.
Devotees.